Let's get to the install. What's up guys, it is Eric from Verus Engineering, and today we are doing another install on our GT350R. Now this product will likely fit with the GT350 as well, and maybe even regular Mustangs, but it's going on our GT350R, and currently that is what we know it will fit. This is going to be part one of we're going to call it 3-part underbody makeover for the Mustang. The underbody of the Mustang really lacks some aerodynamic components in our opinion, and from our initial assessment and CFD analysis, it actually showed that the components that we want to add are actually beneficial to the car. So this is going to be part one of that addition, and that is what we're going to call the fender liner kit. Now if you'll look on your car, or some photos that we'll throw up here, there's a gaping hole in the rear of the fender liner, and that's just not great for aerodynamics. It's basically shoving air where it's not supposed to be and not beneficial to the car overall. So by redirecting this air, we're actually improving front end downforce, and we're actually reducing drag of the vehicle. It's a really neat part as well. They are plastic, and let me grab it real quick. So it is a pretty neat component. It has some nut plates in the bottom side there, as you can see. It has a cool little logo. But ABS part, so it's basically going to act like a factory fender liner, but it's actually an aerodynamic component, and it improves the performance of your Mustang. So it's a really neat product for us. The second part of this underbody makeover, I guess you could call it, would be a flat underbody kit, which we will be installing here shortly after. And then the third part is some what we're calling turning vanes currently. That name may change when we release it, but basically these vanes actually manipulate the airflow on the underbody of the vehicle and actually improve the rear diffuser's function downstream. Again, there's some really neat things going on with, at least in my opinion, in what we're doing with the Ford Mustang, and hopefully you guys appreciate it as well. As far as this fender liner install, very easy. We made it extremely easy in my opinion to install. You get a few brackets, you get a few fender liners, and then you have to drill a few holes in your factory fender liner to either install plastic screws or what I prefer, rivet nuts. I would budget probably about an hour for the install. Probably the most difficult part is going to be jacking up your car. We have the car on the lift. I actually think jacking the car up might actually be easier for this install, but it's already on the lift, so I'm not going to take it off. Basic hand tools are needed. We'll go over all of that information here shortly. As far as tools required, we have a drill bit, a drill. We have a stepper drill bit. You ultimately need either 11/64 for the plastic screws, or you need 3/8 inch for the plastic rivet nuts. So ultimately, whichever route you go with the install, you need that size respectively. 4mm Allen wrench or socket, I prefer sockets, ratchet, 5mm Allen socket, screwdriver, and a 9/16 wrench, and that is all you need. A Sharpie does help as well, so grab a Sharpie for marking the holes that we'll have to drill, but that is all you need for the install. Alright guys, so first part of the install, we're going to remove the wheel. Pretty easy there, 21mm as long as you have the factory wheels. I don't know if you have aftermarket ones, figure that out. Then, as you can see, the massive gaping hole, that's just super awesome for airflow. That's what we're going to be fixing. First part of the install, we're going to remove that plastic push rivet with a screwdriver. So, screwdriver in the little slot. And that comes out. Then we're going to move on to installing a rivet nut. All right, so the next part of the install, I can't get on camera because I just can't get a camera in here while I work, but that slot we're going to install a hex rivet nut into, and to do so you'll use the 9/16 wrench and the 5mm Allen socket, hopefully, and basically we'll install that as centered as possible, and then we can install that bracket. I'll walk over and show you that real quick. But as far as this location, there's the wheel well straight backwards. The other side's a little different, but not that different. So to install, as you can see, it's got a hex side, pretty nice. To install this, you're gonna hold this steady. So hold the nut steady, 9/16 inch wrench, and then you screw on with the 5mm Allen bolt. It is a good idea to lubricate the threads to ensure that they don't gall too bad. From what I've found, this has been used quite often and quite regularly. And as far as how it looks, so there's the slot, and then that just slides in there. And then basically the hex portion keeps it from rotating. So then you center it, and then we'll tighten down that rivet nut, and I'll get a video of that installed here in a second. All right, so at this point, we are going to loosely install the fender liner. And I am going to be battling the lift. So that is what you're gonna be seeing me struggle with over here. But otherwise, it should go on pretty easily. This goes behind the factory unit. And then we're using the factory clip here. And then push upward on the fender liner, and then you can tighten that guy down. All right, so at this point, the unit's pretty much square with the bottom of the frame, and then we're going to push this rearward, mark those 3 holes, pull everything back off, and then drill those holes. All right, so at this point I rotated the wheel so that I have a little bit more space to drill. I have our drill with a stepper drill bit. Now we're going to 3/8 inch because I'm installing rivet nuts. I don't want this falling off. But if you decide you want to install plastic screws here, here, and here, use an 11/64 drill bit. I am using a 3/8 for the rivet nut. This is your choice, not mine, your choice. So we supply hardware for both. I'm going rivet nuts once again, but basically just move the wheel out of the way and then drill the holes with your drill bit of choice. And there's the 3 holes that we will install rivet nuts into. All right, so now it is time to install the rivet nuts. If you're doing the plastic screws, simply install the fender liner and then the screw with a washer, and then you'll screw directly into the OEM plastic liner. That shouldn't be an issue, and pretty straightforward there. And then we'll finish up with doing some bolts on the rear bracket there after we install the rear bracket. Now, if you're doing the rivet nuts, these are specific plastic rivet nuts. So these are rivet nuts that are designed to go into plastic, which are really neat. So basically it's going to be similar to the previous install, and I recommend once again to use lubricant on the threads so that they do not gall or mess up the rivet nut. 9/16 wrench, where are we at? 9/16 wrench, there we go. Hand tools, you can probably use an impact. I'm not going to. And then you basically just tighten it. At first, there's gonna be a little bit of resistance. Actually, not really, but sometimes there is. And then it goes fairly easy. And then eventually it's gonna really feel like there's a lot more resistance, and that's when you stop. That's when the rivet nut's fully installed. You don't need to go crazy with it, but it does definitely tighten down for a while. And I'm getting to the point where I can feel some resistance, and now I'm stopping. At this point, the rivet nut is installed. There you go. First rivet nut installed. I'll do the other two off camera because it's fairly uneventful. But then we can actually get to basically almost installing the fender liner. We have to do the rear bracket, and then it's basically done. All right, so all three rivet nuts are installed into the factory fender. We are going to hope that all the holes line up. All these holes line up. They should. But if not, you can always enlarge these holes. We supply fender washers. They're fairly large. So once again, get this up here. Snake this through underneath. Push it into place. There we go. All right. And then we can grab the M6 button head cap screws and fender washers and install this real quick. All right, so like I said, the button head cap screws are installed, fender washer, and then the Verus fender liner. You can also, like I said, I don't know, 2 or 3 times before, you can use the plastic sheet metal screws that we provide, use the same washer, and then go directly into the plastic. Something I did forget to mention during this install, and I apologize, is that we currently don't have, well, you can't see my hand, this underbody panel. It's a really neat part from Ford, but basically it's off right now. If you had it on your car, you would undo a bunch of the bolts. There's 2 in the middle, there's 1 right here, there's 1 right here, and then you'd be able to like pull this down a hair and then slip this underneath. So this fender liner goes on top of that underbody panel. So last part of the install, we're going to install that rear bracket. Sorry, you can't see me, but we're gonna install that rear bracket, and then we're going to install the fender liner to that rear bracket. All right, so we are back under the car, and each side of the car has a slightly different bracket. This is the right-hand bracket. It bolts onto the rivet nut we installed previously. Same with the other side. It's a little different, but the rivet nut goes in a very similar location. Anyway, the bracket is installed. These will be powder coated black. This is a prototype, a very early production unit. So basically this will be powder coated black, but this bolts on to the rivet nut, and then it also bolts on to the fender liner, and that all gets tightened. No rattles, so that's good. And basically the install is done. And once again, to kind of clarify what I was talking about with that underbody panel, the underbody panel goes underneath that, and the bolt will go through the fender liner in that location as well. Right now it is off. All right guys, that concludes the install of our fender liner kit. Overall, really not that bad, and a great addition to your aerodynamic package of your Mustang. I've got to get the car back together so that we can do some testing next week, and by the time these kits are actually out there for you guys to purchase, this is a very early production model, and we're using it on our car for testing. So far to date, same tires and same car, and no modifications to the car other than dive planes and the rear diffuser strakes. I've been able to drop about 1/2 second from last year's best time on better tires, in my opinion. The tires are getting pretty dang worn at this point. Same Cup 2s that came on the car. But yeah, otherwise, the car is unchanged. We've dropped 1/2 second. We're down into the mid 15s at Putnam, which isn't bad in my opinion. Now I'm rambling. Anyways, let's stop that install manual here and yeah, have a good day.
Ihaksi.